Thank you for watching another video from Rowe Dental Laboratory on dental technology. This particular video is going to cover custom titanium abutments versus stock abutments, which has been a pretty hot topic over the years. Rowe primarily makes custom abutments. Perhaps 95% of our abutments that leave the building are custom, that are designed in software, patient-specific, as opposed to an abutment that's just been ordered out of a catalog or that arrives with the case. Our customers just choose custom. And they do this for many, many good reasons. And we're going to go over most of them today. One of the main reasons, and I'll just go through some quick bullet points here, but one of the main reasons is material strength. If you have a stock abutment, the margin is generally very low, subgingival, sometimes all the way down at the implant level. And the material that has to make up the difference up to the tissue and up to the crown is a weaker material than titanium. And so you end up with an Emax material or a zirconia material all the way down subgingival. And that is just a weak point, as opposed to on the right-hand side where a titanium substrate or custom abutment makes up that gap between the implant and the tissue. So strength is one reason to choose custom abutments. Another reason is stock abutments are not anatomical. And you can see down subgingival, that blanching is sometimes wished, sometimes desired, but it's not possible generally with a stock abutment. In fact, often the flange on a stock abutment is deficient and the tissue has to grow to it, as opposed to a custom abutment on the right hand side. It is always anatomical. It is always designed in a direction that is pointing towards the contact. So in other words, if there was a tooth here next to this one, an adjacent tooth, the direction of the emergence would be pointing directly towards the contact. And that's a default. We always have a soft tissue model in an implant restoration. And so there are variables, depending on whether there was a custom healing abutment or whether there's a stock healing abutment, or whether the doctor is willing to blanch or not, or if there's going to be an incision made at surgery for a custom abutment. But as a standard, the direction is pointed here. And what that means is that the custom abutment will be anatomical, but would always displace the tissue a little here, and it should help prevent food traps because of the tissue displacement and closing the gap between the teeth. Another reason is crown retention. Often, stock abutments don't have a flat side. It's just a simple round abutment. And obviously, if the abutment is round and the juncture down at the margin is round, then you don't have an anti-rotational mechanism to keep the crown in the right place, even after cemented. The laboratory ends up maybe carving a flat side in, or perhaps the abutment does have a flat side in it, but still, because of the cement gap, there is a rotational variable in a stock abutment. In a custom abutment, by contrast, the customized part of the top of the abutment and also the margin, you can see the margin is not just round, it goes down lingually and up facially generally. And it follows the contours of the tissue, just a little bit sub-tissue, and therefore, just by nature, it has an anti-rotational mechanism built into it. Better retention and longevity. The height of an abutment is generally guesswork with a stock abutment. Most companies have tall or short, and that is not an effective way to retain a crown or to fill that void. And a custom abutment is always crown designed first, then the abutment is designed within the crown. Therefore, the abutment will fill the optimal space within the crown and have the optimal height for crown retention and for crown strength. Obviously, if you have more titanium inside the crown to a certain extent, you're going to have a stronger crown as opposed to a crown that has a lot of emax or zirconia material and only a little bit of titanium. So it adds a lot of strength to the restoration. And then, of course, here's one of the hottest topics in stock versus a custom abutment, the cement line. With a custom abutment, the cement line is much closer to the gingiva. Now, in this particular case, the doctor is choosing to have the margin almost at zero at the tissue. Our standard is lower than this, not quality-wise, but lower in position. We have our rules. Facial is 1 millimeter, lingual is 3/4 of a millimeter, and so is the interproximal. So you have some subgingival margin so that you can have allow for some tissue recession. But the point is that when you seat the abutment and then you seat the crown, where do you want to clean up the cement? You want to clean it up close to the tissue and not subgingival down at close to the junction of the implant and the crown. Now, of course, you can order stock abutments from a lot of companies that have a higher collar height, but you're still not going to follow the ideal contours of the tissue, and you're going to have to dig a little deeper to remove the cement. And as we've seen the studies, most of the time the cement is still there, causing issues down the road. When viewing from an occlusal aspect, you can see the big difference between a stock and a custom abutment. Perhaps at the top of the crown, the occlusal of the crown, or the incisal of the crown, they may look very similar from one type of abutment to another, but at the implant level, clearly there can be an issue with crown to root ratio, with tissue displacement, with emergence profile, with just natural root eminence. One is clearly better than the other. Even picking a custom abutment with zero blanching that just fits the site where the stock healing abutment is may be deficient. And a normal abutment for us, there's a little bit of blanching. Not enough to make an incision or to make discomfort for the patient generally, but we like to displace a little bit of tissue, at least a millimeter, to push the tissue out and to try to meet this contact point and eliminate black holes and to eliminate food traps. But the ideal abutment is one where the doctor is willing to make an incision. These are either mesial, distal, sometimes lingual, but usually mesial distal, and allow this abutment to seat with a little bit of blanching, anesthetize the patient, and then we have a crown that looks like a natural tooth, a natural emergence. And then there's always the anterior. There's always as we say, a fight against the black triangle. And stock abutments, you're going to be limited. Yes, you can use the porcelain, and you can use the crown to try to close this gap, but generally there's going to be an issue with a stock abutment in the anterior, and we're probably about 100%, 99, almost 100% stock abutments in the anterior, both zirconia and titanium. And you can see this is same patient, middle is stock and the right is a custom abutment. Although we don't fabricate many PFMs anymore, there are some reasons, of course. I don't want to downplay the PFM too much, but today it's really is thought of a little bit old school. There, I just downplayed it. But you can see one of the reasons to order a custom abutment with a PFM, especially if you're using a noble alloy. With a custom abutment, you only need a little bit of alloy, and with a stock, a lot of alloy, especially if you're using a high noble or using a yellow gold. Just a huge difference in cost, and not to mention you have potential margin between the coping and the porcelain, and then for sure a margin down here, very far subcrestal on a stock abutment. So another good reason to use a custom abutment. Just an example of a case we found in the lab recently. an argument for making a custom abutment. I mean, this is 19 millimeters of space. And with this case, a stock abutment showed up, and we had a crown. Actually, I think it was the patient's actual tooth, or that might be a crown. And we were now making another abutment and needed to idealize the shape of number 8. Well, just look at the gap. Now, obviously, we're not going to make a crown that reaches all the way down to that margin. That would not make sense. That's going to lead to failure with a crown to root ratio issue. So instead, we make a custom abutment. But this particular case, the doctor had a stock abutment the first time, didn't work, and so we made a custom the second time. Obviously, it's not an ideal situation, but if you have to deal with a situation with a deep implant, custom is going to be the best. And we made this screw retained so that there is no margin line that is deep down into that sulcus. Here's another case. A little note here, almost finished with the presentation. This is a fairly normal depth for an implant, and maybe a stock part would work on this implant, perhaps, and just use porcelain to fill the gap. But really, to fill that sulcus and to meet the adjacent tooth, mesial adjacent tooth, I really need a custom abutment and displace that tissue and have it seat. Here's another case where it looks ideal from a lateral view, from a lingual lateral view. Could probably use a stock abutment in this case from this view, but when you look at it from an occlusal view, it's a lingualized placement, and this is really impossible to make an ideal crown facially. How do you bring that abutment out facially and make it ideal for cleansability, for aesthetics, avoiding food traps and so forth? That is making a custom abutment and displacing that tissue. And if you still want it screw retained, that's possible too with angled screw channels. That's available now for many implant systems. Just one more. Here's a stock abutment that looks ideal from one view. Then from an occlusal view, clearly you would not want the crown in that position, and you would make a stock abutment or angled screw channel stock or custom abutment. But then you can place the implant in the right place. And just a couple of final examples. In larger cases, computers definitely do it better than people. All the abutments in the top right corner are all custom abutments. They are designed in a perfect draw, path of insertion draw by a computer. Obviously a person is pushing the mouse, but they are all designed with a draw. So for a bridge that's full arch or a larger bridge, you want a computer making the draw as opposed to a surveying device or just hand grinding and trying to guess what the path is. Computers design these types of abutments from the restoration first, as mentioned before. The restoration is diagnostically waxed up, and then the abutments fit inside of that restoration for ideal contour and sizing. Just an example here. So this is a digital workup on the top left. Idealize the teeth, put the teeth in the right place, the emergence, aesthetics, everything, and then the abutments are designed within the confines of that diagnostic workup. Much better than stock parts. Several of the images in this video were from Atlantis Abutments, so thank you, Atlantis, for allowing us to use these images. We do use their services occasionally. However, our custom abutments are either OEM, sometimes by request, sometimes by partnerships or necessity. For instance, BioHorizon Vulcan, very happy to use their milling center. They do a wonderful job. Straumann, by standard, we send to Straumann to have them milled. We can use Nobel. Megagen, by standard, is a custom abutment from their blank with their reversible screw, and several other companies. Certainly Zimmer Biomet as a standard, especially with Encode. We use their Bellatech system for milling abutments. So the options are available for many implant systems. Just have that conversation with us about what is best for you, for your patient, and we will do whatever you like. Thank you very much for watching this video. We hope this convinced you that custom is better than stock. Computers and people do it better than just people. Kind of a ongoing joke we have. Computers do it better than people. But thank you for watching, and choose Rowe and choose custom abutments. Thank you.